round to tend these fires.
Hi there. My name is Tercy Engelhardt, and I want to welcome you to the Unreasonably Grateful podcast, Living in Grace by Choice. However, you got here, I'm grateful that you joined us. Whether you've been listening for this is 260th episode, 10, or your first one, thank you for sharing your journey with me. And that's what we're doing here. So, I don't have your answers. I say that every week. I simply am sharing tidbits of my story of recovering from teenage abuse, struggling with an eating disorder, living the life of an addict for 20 years, and now 39 years of recovery. And I'm just sharing things I've learned along the way, kind of universal wisdoms that we all have access to. But when we hear them in a particular way at a particular time in our life, some of them can settle in a little bit and become guidelines for our own journey, taking us to the next step, the next opportunity for our own personal growth. So that's how I want you to listen. Listen, like, is there something that's speaking to you? And if so, take it on. Every day I give you a challenge and take it on, try it out, see if it makes a difference. If it does, keep practicing it. If it doesn't, set it down and come back next week and see what we have to share. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I do offer sessions on Tuesday. In the notes, you can see how you sign up for that on my tercyengelhardt.com website. And it's an honor and privilege to sit with people as an elder in the community. And if it's something that you're called to, sign up and I'll look forward to getting to know you a little bit better. All right. So this particular week is called Surrendering My Will. Now, it's kind of perfect that it happens to fall for those of you who practice Lent during the Lent season, the 40 days leading up to the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And so there's a process of actually emptying ourselves out. But you don't have to be somebody who celebrates Lent to see the value in this. And the purpose of this is considering that there are wills that you have, a self-will that you have that sometimes wants what's best for you. And other times, quite frankly, it leads you in the wrong direction. And oftentimes we don't realize that till we're older and we look back and we can see, wow, that actually probably wasn't the great choice for me to make. At the time, either we didn't have the tools, we weren't conscious or aware enough, or we knew it wasn't the best choice, but we did it anyway, which is that kind of defiant part of our will sometimes that just wants to do what it wants to do because it wants to do it. And hey, we learn from that. There's nothing wrong with that. We learn from it. But that's the key, to make sure that we learn from those choices that we make. So last week, we talked about surrendering your will in relationship, wanting for the other person what they want. And I had a couple of questions that I just wanted to follow up on and remind you. I'm not saying that if your partner or someone you love or care for chooses something that goes against your moral fabric or what you believe or what you even think is best for them, that you're necessarily supporting them in that. You're simply stepping back and not being, I know better. I know what you should be doing. You're not arguing with them. You're giving them the freedom to make their own choices and sometimes their own mistakes. But who are you to judge? So it's really that releasing of that judgment of, I know what's best. And this particular episode is a continuation of that. Like, how do we surrender our will, especially when we think we do know what's best, or we want what we want, or we know how we think something should go or something should turn out. And so we're taking the steps that are consistent with that end result that we want. And what I'm saying here is, it's a big step, but what if we surrender our will? Somebody was talking to me yesterday. We had a couple over for lunch, and they were talking about a family, a local family, and they have I think she's a teenager, a young teenager, preteen. And they were talking about how she can be so defiant to her mother. and the will of that child. And we've all probably had our own experiences growing up or raising children or seeing nieces or nephews or whatever. And you see how the will of a child oftentimes doesn't want what's best for that child. And that's why we have parents and godparents and aunties and uncles, people to contribute to the process of helping that child or young person grow in surrendering their will and pursuing what? What happens when you surrender your will? Well, here's what I want to recommend. I want to recommend that when you are up against your will, and you know what that feels like. The will can oftentimes be righteous, judgmental, critical. That will wants you to be seen and heard and first and more important. That will thinks you know what's best, that you're right. And when you're up against that, what I'm suggesting this week is that we just recognize there it is. That's my self will. And while it may have the best of intentions for you, practice just breathing into that, letting go, and holding space for something else to arise. If your will isn't running the show, then what's possible? If you're a person of faith, pray. If you're not a person of faith, pray. Pray anyway. Like open yourself up to, okay, what's a divine will? What is that? How does that divine will impact the choices or the quality of your life? Whatever that might look like. Go for a walk in nature, swim in the ocean or the lake, or get yourself in a body of water. There's something about water that helps move that energy, that self-will that, yeah, can be reckless sometimes. Let's just be clear. And it's fine that sometimes you're following your self-will. I'm just saying, let's practice this week surrendering our self-will to some higher power, divine will, however you access that. Like I said, nature is a beautiful tool. Silence, prayer, meditation, yoga, dance, fasting. There's so many different ways to be able to access that. So those are some suggestions. Dance, ecstatic dance, walk, get in the woods, get in the water, sit quietly. You know, we're so exposed to so much noise in today's world that silence is a luxury. I remember when I had this insight as really kind of a poor single mom, and I had this insight, oh, wealthy people have more space. You know, I could rent a small apartment or house, but wealthier people had more space, which also allowed for more silence, more quiet. But we can bring silence and quiet into any space. My father was a great teacher of, can you just be still and quiet in the midst of total chaos? That's a real opportunity, and it's challenging. Can you do that? Yeah, so that's what I want you to do this week. What I want you to practice this week is first catching and recognizing when your self-will is running the show, and see if you can't identify it, and then just slow it down, take a breath, go for a walk, get yourself in nature, dance, breathe, something like that. Just slow it all down and then see what shows up. See if you don't get some guidance, some insight. And perhaps it leads in the same direction, but perhaps it doesn't. But either way, all I'm wanting you to do this week is to just recognize your self-will and then give yourself a little break or space. Surrender that moment of your self-will's kind of more forceful entry. Relax, let your shoulders drop, take a breath, and then discover what you might find out. Okay? And I'll be here next week. And I look forward to seeing you then, right here. Have a beautiful, beautiful week. And if you think someone could benefit from listening in, invite them to join us. Okay? See you then.